stand there and whimper when the staircase is like 2 steps over. Cool.
I think we are probably about 30 seconds from being live.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's see. Did I just get the notification? I did. Awesome. So if you are, if you're personally currently like on Facebook or something like that, you may want to just mute that so that we don't get the echo. I'm putting it on my personal Facebook page now. So, boom. I'll be the first one to love it and share it. So yeah, so y'all know how much I love, and I'll cue us in as well. So no worries. So you guys know personally, like this conversation is always one of my favorites. Like I love what you guys do, and then for me, it's also this was something that I never even thought that it existed, and so to have this conversation with every time I get a conversation to talk about dating violence with you guys, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Like, because I always come away with nuggets and I always come away with learning something. So it is 10:06. I say, let's just go ahead and get started. I am excited. I'm always excited. We get it. But I am excessively excited because again, if for the folks who are just joining now in the pre-show, which is like the first 5 minutes where we're just kind of waiting for people to gather, I just shared with them how excited I am because I love having the dating violence conversation. It's so meaningful. And then as a parent, when I look back at my teenage years, I would not have recognized the signs of dating violence in my teenage years. And then having a son, although he's just 6, he'll be 7 in August. If he came to me later in life, and I think I've shared this with you guys, if he came to me as a teenager, I don't think I would believe him before I knew this information. I think I would just say, "Oh man, whatever. She just likes you, push on, right?" And so now that I know so much about it, I am able to kind of have the conversation differently. I think and I guess I'm learning from you guys, and I think that's the point. Is I'm able to have that conversation a little bit differently with friends, and I'm able to recognize warning signs, and I'm like, look at me learning. So anyway, let's officially get this conversation started. Welcome everybody. Again, my name is Jeff Brown. I'm the Vice President of Development and Marketing for Partnership Against Domestic Violence. I have the privilege, man, of having Taylor and Jenny with me today. They both represent our teen dating violence program, but I'm not going to do their introduction any justice. So Taylor, Jen, in that order, just tell us who you are, what you do for PDV, and why you joined this movement.
Thanks, Jeff. So my name is Taylor Shropshire. I'm a teen empowerment advocate in the Dating Violence Prevention Program, and I'm doing this work for the same reasons that you just said you are. I didn't really know that this was an issue until I started interning at this organization, and I just kind of fell in love with the message, and I want to contribute anywhere I can.
Awesome. Jenny, what about you?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jen Chidrianthan. I'm the coordinator of dating violence prevention at PADV. I do this work because you're right, like I didn't know it was an issue, and then I lived through college and I lived through high school, and hindsight is always 2020, and I'm really appreciative that we have this platform now to make a difference in young people's lives.
For me, what was crazy, and this is not a question that I asked you guys, but I'll tell you, like when I learned about dating violence, when I got to PDV and I learned about dating violence, like the first thing I did was reflect on past relationships. And then I went, oh crap, I was in some emotionally abusive relationships in the past. Like, and I never, you never thought to process it that way, or I never thought to process it that way. I just assumed that was just how relationships are. But I think more importantly, I didn't have anybody, I didn't even, when I think back on it, had I known, I don't think I would have had the conversation with anybody. And that's I think that's why we're here today, is how do we as adults and as parents and future parents in you guys' case, hopefully maybe one day, how do we lean in as parents and have that conversation in a very meaningful and holistic way? And so I'm excited. I'm just going to jump right in here with the first question to Taylor. So could you frame this? What is dating violence? What excuse me, not dating violence. What specifically is teen dating violence?
So the simplest way that we define teen dating violence is a pattern of controlling and manipulative behaviors that someone uses against their boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner. And this can manifest in very different ways. The most common one that people jump to is physical abuse, but the more sneaky ones can be verbal and emotional abuse. There's also sexual abuse, which can be very harmful. And then a new one that we're seeing a lot lately is technological abuse.
So one of the and I think this is about, thank you, Taylor, by the way. And I think part of the reason why I feel so passionate about having this conversation so often, and this leads right into my next question. I'll just ask it, Jenny. Why is dating violence such a pressing issue?
Yeah. So dating violence itself is extremely concerning from a public health perspective across the US. Georgia itself ranks third in the nation, where a high school student will experience physical assault in a dating relationship. And physical assault, like Taylor said, is one of the more extreme reactions that we see. So the prevalence within Georgia is also concerning. When we go to college students, we find that a majority of college students who look back on their dating history say that they've been in an abusive relationship while they were in college. When we look at fatality, we find that the majority of fatalities, in which, by the way, Georgia is 10th in the nation where men kill women, over 90% of those fatalities were linked to intimate partner violence, and over 50% of those cases, the victim met the abuser that was going to later kill them one day between the ages of 13 to 21.
That's
So
crazy.
we see this extremely important piece of talking about teen dating violence because it's on kind of like the development of this kind of public issue that we need to address.
One of the statistics, and I always find, like, with some statistics you can make them say what you want them to say, but the one statistic that we talk about in dating violence that specifically speaks to me as far as the prevalence of the issue is the fact that one in three teenagers will experience dating violence in their relationship, but
Right.
82% of parents don't believe is an issue for their teenager. And
Right.
so that to me is breathtaking to know that 33% of our kids are dealing with it right now,
Right.
but 82% of parents are like, nah, that's not my child, right? What
Right.
and Jen, what's leading to parents not really understanding that this is an issue for their kids?
I think it's a couple of different factors. To highlight one right now, like, they're kids, right? So if your kids are getting to the point where they're starting to date, you never want to think of situations where violence can be directly affecting your child. So part of it is that protectiveness, but also it has to do with like how we conceptualize and view domestic violence or intimate partner violence as individuals in our society. We always think it happens to folks who are in their 30s and that person is a woman and she has bruises and she's crying. But we know that dating violence and the abusive behaviors we see in IPV are also present in teen dating violence. So I think that, parents are genuinely concerned for their kids, but they don't know how to talk to their kids about this issue. And then there's also a hesitation, I imagine, on the teen side of wanting to divulge such personal information to their parents. This is the first time the teen gets freedom. They're dating, they can pick their partner. And I think that disconnect is really why those statistics are so like far apart.
Thank you. Hey, so Taylor, jump in here, man, and for all the parents that may be watching, what are some of the warning signs that we need to look out for as parents when we're thinking about, hey, is our child in a dating violence relationship? What are a few warning signs we need to look out for?
Sure. So some of the most common ones can be a change in mood swing. They might get really angry very easily because they might have a lot on their mind. They could start developing signs of depression. There are also some physical signs that you can also look out for. There are changes in sleeping and eating habits, and then also just look out and see if maybe their grades are dropping. Maybe they have no interest in sports or hobbies. Maybe they suddenly have stopped hanging out with friends because someone is making all of those decisions for them, and they might be a little bit on edge and always concerned about where their boyfriend or girlfriend is. They have to always be checking their phone, again, because someone's controlling everything they're doing and they're
Mhm.
scared of what would happen if they didn't follow what they said.
This is amazing to me, because well, it's amazing, and it's a little bit scary, right? Because as I listen to some of the warning signs, in my mind I went, wow, that's some of that is just normal teenage behavior, right? Like, I'm, and maybe it's not. I don't have a teenager yet, so this is also kind of scary as well. But is some of this can some of these warning signs also be confused with just general teenage? I'm going through a lot in my teenage world kind of life. Is that not a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Lots of these can be conflated with just being an
Hmm.
angsty teen, or it could be signs of a greater struggle that they're going through.
Exactly.
Which is important that we have this conversation and parents and adults can know that these could also be a sign of something more dangerous that's happening.
And I'm glad you answered it that way because it leads me to my very next question. Because I want to, Jen, why is this conversation such a hard conversation for parents to have, about healthy relationships with their teen?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a start, like this is our society, like we have so many like norms within it that make abuse okay. Like I think a really popular one is like if boys hit you or boys touch you, that means they like you. Um, and that level of vulnerability when having that conversation between parents and teens, like I was saying earlier, like that makes all the difference. Like teens can be going through an issue that might be just regular day-to-day angsty teenager, but it might be indicative of violence in their lives. But what's super important is that we're able to have that space where teens can openly talk to their parents about what's going on without repercussions.
Mm.
And I think managing that space and creating that dialogue is really hard for parents, especially when you've spent so much of your life being a caregiver. And now it's your time to kind of just be a listening ear
Mm.
and be doing stuff for your kid with your kid involved in those decisions. And I think that transition, that lessening of power, I think that's also a hard thing to navigate as an adult.
Wow. Um, that you said a mouthful, and I want to. No, no. I mean, it was a good mouth, and yeah, it was a good mouthful. Um, it's interesting because one of the other stats that I always point to is that 82% of parents feel very confident that they can recognize the warning signs,
Right.
but a majority of them couldn't 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 recognize any of the warning signs, and so right now we have a lot of time and opportunity to be around family and to be around each other. Are the warning signs that I should look out for a little bit different now because we're all kind of quarantined somewhat in with amongst family, and I may not have access to my abuser? So should I be looking out for different things, or as a parent, are there is there a more focused list of things that I should be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially knowing this time because because we know that high schoolers more or less reside with their parents,
Mhm.
say with middle schoolers. And in a time like this, when you have to be at home and you can't leave to go see your boyfriend or your girlfriend, there are a good amount of technological abuse signs that we recommend parents look out for. One of which is if your teen is, teens are always constantly on their cell phone,
Right,
but
right.
even
I'm
just
constantly on my cell phone, but
right,
anyway, go
right. I am
ahead.
too. But like if you can see that your teen is like getting agitated while they're on their phone, or they're nervous while they're on their phone, or they're spending all their time on their phone, Or if you ask them like, hey, can you put your phone away to do some family activity? The reaction isn't like, teenagers being like, oh no, you can't tell me what to do, man. And it's more so like, no, I can't. Like if I put my phone down, that can lead to something happening to me. And being able to identify those signs and just opening up a dialogue is kind of where we see this going and being effective.
Hey, I love the fact that you channeled like 90s teenager right there.
Yeah.
With the, no, man, I don't want to. So I love that.
Yeah.
So how do we as parents even open the door for the conversation? Like, I feel like that's the hard first step, right? Is I don't even know what to say. And so how do I even open the door for that conversation to be available to me, if that makes sense?
Right. Well, I think the first thing that's so important that we don't see enough of is just parents having time set every week to just engage with their teenager, engage with your child, see what's going on in their life. Even if they don't want to talk about a lot, do something together because that helps foster that relationship. If you've been tuning into our PADV Atlanta Instagram page, we have been running our Have the Talk campaign.
Shameless plug.
Right. Yeah. Shameless plug. In which we've been encouraging parents with specific prompts to talk to their teenagers about dating violence and what is healthy and unhealthy dating behavior. Another thing too is establishing boundaries. Like this is information that your teen wants to share with people that they can trust. So saying that, this is an open space, what you're saying here doesn't have repercussions, outlining your role if your teen does tell you something concerning, how you're going to act, really putting the power in that person's hands, I think is a really good way to facilitate that conversation and reminding yourself that in this situation, this is my role. And whether I like it or not, it's the safest thing for my teen for this to be my role.
So I have two things, and Taylor, jump in here. One of the things that Jen just said that jumped out at me was creating just the space for conversation to happen. And I'm assuming, or creating the time, right? So it's not necessarily that we're having a conversation. It's just, am I wrong to just say it's my son and I just going for a walk, or where it's just us two, and I disengage from my phone. Is that kind of what you guys are advocating for, at least to just leave the door open for the conversation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Just like you make time out of your day for anything else that's important to you, you have to schedule that time to be able to talk to your kid as well. So if you start to have that time every single week, then they will be more comfortable with you and then be more comfortable coming to you about anything if something does happen. If you don't have a good, healthy relationship and don't have the grounds for that healthy communication, then they're not going to be comfortable coming to you in the first place.
And so, Taylor, one of your main responsibilities is also working with our teen advisory board. Is that something that you are hearing a lot of from them as well? That, hey, we just want the space to have the conversation when we're ready to have it. Is that what you're hearing from those guys?
Yeah, sure. And the teens that we have on the teen advisory board, I really think they do view that as a safe space. Sometimes we have like a rigid agenda and we have things that we need to accomplish, but sometimes it is just a place that we can come and hang out and talk. And lots of times they've said that that teens are more comfortable talking with each other. So in the first place, they're probably not going to go to their family to begin with. So if you do start to develop that relationship, then they will feel comfortable talking to their parents as well. So that space is most definitely important.
What, Jen, what is, and this is not a question I sent you, but I'm sure you're more than equipped to handle it. If my teenager drops that bomb on me, we've done all that we're supposed to do, right? We've went for walks. I've created the space. I'm like the model parent that you guys would love to see. And then boom, my son hits me with, this is what's going on in my relationship. I don't know what to do, XYZ. How do I respond to that, right? Because there's a traditional response, and it's like, boom, right? It's like I immediately jump in, and I can only imagine if I was a parent of a little girl, right? Like it's like, fix it, let's charge over to this guy's house and we're dealing with this right now. But
Mhm,
that may
mhm.
not be the way that
Right.
so my child drops that bomb on me. How am I supposed to respond?
Yeah. So when we talk about engaging with survivors of abuse, the number one thing we always try to tell folks, no matter what the age is the worst thing to do is to directly confront the abuser.
Mhm.
When we're talking about power and when we're talking about control, you don't want any reason to have your abuser pin you as somebody that your child can't talk to. And by taking aggressive acts and aggressive motions like that, you can then kind of disrupt the connection that you have created with your child. Um, when we also talk about talking to survivors, we say that it's okay to not know the answers to everything. You might not know exactly what to do in that moment, and that's okay because you're also undergoing shock. So, programs like PADV, our program, if you go to the other agencies like Live Safe, Women's Resource Center, there are folks there that you can talk to on the best steps that you can take for your child. And furthermore, steps that we are only reporting if it indicates a mandated reporting situation. Another thing that we tell parents is to, take a deep breath. Like parents are protective of their kids. They're probably gonna go and do all of these things to protect the safety of your kid, right?
Yes.
But if your kid has been living, and I'll use this term because we're using it a lot right now in a pandemic, but if your kid has been living in a new normal for a long time, adjusting it to a completely new normal after that is also going to have effects on your kid. So, being there, being present, making decisions that your kid wants you to make, but also relying on like DV agencies, the school system, counselor networks to really bring and center this survivor that you are raising into the justice that they need. And a lot of that is rehabilitative, a lot of that is restorative.
That's awesome. And so we talk a lot about, when we, as an organization, we talk a lot specifically. Oh, and I want to say for the folks who are watching today, if you have questions of Janany and Taylor, feel free, drop them in the comment section. We'd love to engage with you that way as well. We don't want this to be hey, we're pushing information out to you. We'd love to interact with you directly and answer any of your questions. So if there's something specific about teen dating violence, or dating violence on a college campus, these two, Taylor and Jen, they are literally a wealth of dating violence information. And so they can answer everything and anything and are here to support you guys. So my question originally was going to be, when we talk about dating violence in an adult relationship, we always talk about it in the framework of the physical, emotional, financial, psychological, spiritual, kind of all of those kind of forms of dating violence. Are those forms the same in a teen dating violence relationship? And are there any other forms of violence that exist in a teen dating violence relationship that we may not see in a traditional in domestic violence relationship?
Mm-hmm. So I want to reiterate the earlier point. I think Taylor might have brought it up that like everything that we see in adult IPV exists in teen dating violence. When we look at the power and control wheel, which is like the famous visual of our movement that outlines the abusive behaviors that we see in these relationships, that same exact wheel is for teenagers as well. The only thing that is different is the avenues in which these forms of abuse are perpetuated against the person.
Got it.
So when we're looking at teen dating violence, we really recommend, talking about technological abuse. When we look at these younger cases, we see comorbid statistics between dating violence and stalking. And a lot of that stalking aspect is facilitated through technology. One example, not to make anyone paranoid, is that with everybody's iPhone, you have Find Your Friends automatically downloaded. Can you imagine how that app can be used by an abuser, when it's framed for us to use to keep track of our friends as they navigate the community?
Hey, Jen, can you take us, or either Jen, Taylor, either one, because I think you brought up something and it's not in my notes and I don't really know properly how to frame this question. But
Mhm.
can you guys can we put a kickstand down there and just talk specifically a little bit about digital abuse and how that's being how prevalent is that and and I'm sorry because I don't even know the question to ask here, but I feel like you're
Right.
getting in a space where it could be the most helpful for parents because every day it seems like there's a new technology that my son or daughter has access to that I never knew existed, and so I don't even know how to support them or even know the warning signs to look for. I have we like you said, we all have the Find My iPhone app, but the
Right.
idea of Find My Friends, I okay, I'll go look for that on my phone. Like I didn't even think that that was there. So what should we be looking for in terms of stalking and well, not cyberbullying, but you know what I'm saying. Just take it away. Yeah.
So I'll leave this for Taylor to answer because Taylor's
Yes.
a wealth of knowledge, but I'll start it off by saying I was reading the other day, there was this study done in 2011 on gender-based violence within college campuses.
Mhm.
And what they found in that study when they did digital abuse was that other forms of gender-based violence were further perpetuated. So other abusive behaviors happened at a statistically higher rate in
Mhm.
individuals who shared passwords with an abuser versus people who didn't share their computer passwords with an abuser. So just for framing,
Right.
that's the wealth of the research that's out there right now. But yeah, Taylor.
Taylor, yeah, take it away. Talk to us more about digital abuse. What are we looking for as parents, and and like, what are some apps? I think that's probably a better question as well. What are some apps we should be looking for that kind of not necessarily perpetuate the digital abuse, but are more likely to be used for digital abuse, if that makes sense.
Sure. So the first thing I would say that as a parent, you should try to educate yourself on what technology is out there.
Hmm.
Maybe if it's age appropriate, check and see what apps your child is using, and then have that conversation about digital safety to begin with, such as don't give out your name online to people you don't know, don't send pictures to people, things like that. And then be aware of certain apps. The biggest one that comes to mind is Snapchat, where lots of sexual violence can go on, which can also turn to emotional and mental abuse if there's some sort of blackmail situation going on. Um, Also, the location tracking apps, the Find Your Friends, like Jen mentioned. Also, there's a geolocation app feature on Snapchat, which people can easily be tracked by. Also, the fact that there are um, secret apps where people can text and hide pictures and things that need a password on them. So there could be some sort of other cyberbullying and dating abuse going on those as well. I know it's extremely
It's
difficult,
heavy.
especially with all the innovations that seem to be happening
Right.
every single
Right.
day. Yeah.
What's amazing is I fancy myself as someone who is at least on the. I won't say I'm ahead of the curve by no means, but I feel like I'm on the curve with with new stuff that comes out. I may not use it, but at least I know about it and I can use it if I needed to. But man, like, it just seems like it's this never ending struggle or never ending fight to stay ahead or stay in line with what our teenagers are going through as it relates to digital and dating violence. So would you guys recommend, as a parent, we disable the geolocating stuff that's built into cell phones, or have the conversation around why disabling the geolocating features that exist in all social media apps? Should we be having that conversation with our kids about why that is not important to have enabled?
I think a larger conversation first would be having the conversation that we're having right now. If a parent becomes educated about the dangers that technology um, could have on someone's life, then you could start having a conversation about safe ways to act online. So hopefully this wouldn't ever become an issue, because trying to limit certain technologies isn't always productive, and teens might want to use it anyways and go behind their parents' back, which could put them in more danger to start.
So you're
Right.
telling me I cannot be authoritarian in my house? That's
No,
essentially what I hear you're saying.
No, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
no iron fist in my house apparently.
I
Go,
mean,
Jen. You were about to say something. Go ahead.
yeah, just to add on to what Taylor said, like, as adults, especially, and even more so as parents, like, you know, we always talk about youth in their development. We talk about youth growing up, learning. We talk about like youth empowerment so they can reach their full potential. But like kids are smart, and I think like having conversations like these are great critical thinking exercises to like have with your kids and help them to start to make these decisions for themselves, because when they go to college one day or they go out into the world, they're going to need to know like how to assess their options and how to like do their research and things like that. So yeah, I'm totally for everything that Taylor said. Have that talk. Don't just take it away. Let your kid understand that this isn't something they need in the first place, and help them understand why they might feel pressure to have this option available with their friends.
Okay, so I have two more questions that aren't about that aren't the question I'm about to ask you, Jen. I have two more questions. I have one for each one of you. But the one I have right now is so give me what you talked about that give that this is a time for critical thinking and critical learning. What's a question that I could ask my teenager that gets them to think about this stuff for themselves?
Right. Well, our last actually have the talk question was, I thought, really good example of this. So the last one that we posted was, does every relationship need to have relationship drama in it? And I think like that is a great question to ask, because we always talk about relationship drama and like what it is and like how people can be petty and things like that. But we never really talk about what's like a healthy fight, and what's an unhealthy fight. And when are things supposed to be arguments and when are things are petty, I think that's a great question to gauge that with your kid and kind of walk them through that process.
I'd be intrigued to have that conversation. Can't have it with the 7-year-old, and the only reason I say that is because I think for me personally, my perception of a healthy argument is probably going to be vastly different than, or maybe it shouldn't be. I don't know.
Right.
Should there be a difference in what I deem to be a healthy argument or a healthy healthy argument in a relationship versus what might is?
Right.
Should there be that gap?
Right. And I mean, like, even right now, like, I think that it's so important and powerful that, like, even within this question, like, we as adults don't have a straightforward answer. So what are we teaching our kids, Like, what are we painting as this image of what healthy communication looks like in the presence of like frustration and anger and things like that? Do we even model that when we're around our children? So I think, yeah, it's also like a self journey too, because it makes you very aware of these lessons that you're teaching your kids that, you might not even be conscious of on a day-to-day basis. That's the thing about dating violence and domestic violence and IPV, why gender-based violence is still so prevalent. There's this like normative culture in it that we end up teaching to the next generation.
Crazy interesting. I hope you guys hope everybody that's watching today is getting valuable information today. If you are, love to hear about it in the comment section. Drop a thumbs up or high five or a random emoji, whatever your favorite emoji is. Drop it in the comment section. So Taylor, my last question for you, and then Jen, I have another question for you as well. Taylor, how can teens support a friend that they know is an abusive relationship?
If you ever have a friend that comes to you and they're trying to have this conversation with you, the first thing that I would do is just believe them. There's nothing more validating and makes you feel more safe than someone actually believing what you're going through. Recognize that this takes a lot of strength to actually come forth and admit this is happening to them. I would make them aware of all the different resources that they have, help them identify a trusted parent or guardian or someone at school who could help them access maybe some greater resources, and then just maybe help them create a safety plan. I always have the students that I work with do that, and that's definitely an activity that you could do with a friend.
So real quick, okay, see, this is why these things go longer than they're supposed to, because you guys bring up points and then I have more questions. Can you talk to us about what a safety plan is?
Sure. So a safety plan is basically a plan that you have that consists of all of the contact information for parents, maybe your school, maybe your grandmother, maybe your neighbor, different places that you could go if something bad was ever happening to you. And then one thing that I always have people do is create a safe word, which is a word that only a few people know about, but if they ever see it in a text message, a Facebook post, anything like that, it means that you're in danger and that you are in need of any sort of help.
Jen, it feels like you're shaking your head, like, and then you came close. Do you have something you want to add to that?
Oh no, I'm just
Okay,
nodding
all
my
right, all
head.
right.
I'm
No,
like,
okay,
Amen,
cool.
Taylor. You tell them.
So, so yes, just so that the audience knows, like I always have these things scheduled for like 30 minutes so that we can do 20 or 30 minutes worth of conversation. And it's always the guest's fault as to why it goes long. I think we're probably touching the 35 to 40-minute time here. And it's always their fault. It's never mine. They bring up
Yeah.
good points and it makes me want
I'll
to ask
take
more
that.
questions. And I appreciate you guys so much. I really do. So my final question is to Jenny. How can parents better support their teenagers that are in an abusive relationship? Because we know as a parent, just because I find out about the abusive relationship doesn't mean that the abusive relationship ends in that moment, right? So
Right,
how
right.
can I better support my teenager as they go through this abusive relationship?
Right. So like I said earlier, it's okay to not have all the answers. There are experts right in your community that you can talk to for advice. And secondly, you want your teen to be a part of that whole process in getting help, finding solutions, getting outs, things like that. The one thing I recommend for parents is to definitely safety plan with your teen, and whether or not you do that with a professional, I really recommend you contact a DV agency because maybe we're able to highlight areas that maybe you weren't aware of originally where we need to safety plan around. The other thing I would say is, the one thing with IPV that's so heartbreaking about it is that we see an individual be completely disconnected from their social network, from their social support even. So I really recommend parents provide opportunities to re-engage your child in social support. So do long walks together, invite their friends over to hang out, things that make the person feel warm, things that make the person not feel alone and make them feel more trustworthy to talk about what's going on in their lives. And really the biggest thing is to be patient. Like I said earlier, leaving any type of IPV relationship is the most dangerous when the person tries to get out. So making sure that you extend that to kids as well, extend that to teenagers, and be really mindful in all the decisions that you're making so that it doesn't have a flashback effect on the child.
That was amazing. I love this conversation so much. And
Yeah.
I appreciate both of you for just taking the time out this morning and coming and having this conversation with me in the world, obviously. I do want to make sure that everybody knows both Taylor and Jen are also wide open for you guys. If there's questions that you guys have after watching this video, you're like, man, I just need more information. You can always reach out to them. Jen, can you give the email address for you guys?
Yeah, so our email for the teen program and the dating violence program is teenscene, TEENSCENE @padv.org. And if you go onto our website, onto our teen pages, the email is also displayed there.
Perfect. And it's right behind me. So,
Yeah.
so, and again, parents, I want you to know that the best part about all of the programming that we're talking about today is it's absolutely free. So at any point in time, if you want to reach out to Jen or Taylor and just say, hey, after COVID, I'd love to have you come over and talk to my youth group or talk to my teenage friends or talk to my Girl Scout troop, whatever. There's no group too big, no group too small. Those services that we have are absolutely free for you guys. And so again, Jen, thank you so much. Taylor, thank you so much. Follow them, follow the Teens Against Dating Violence on Instagram and Twitter. I think on Instagram it's at PADV Teen Scene. Am I correct? Or is it no? It's Teens Against Dating Violence.
Teens Against Dating Violence. Yeah.
Teens Against Dating Violence on Instagram, PADV Teen Scene.
On
Twitter. They have awesome content that they are putting up every day. So one, have the conversation with your teenager. Two, follow us on all of our social media platforms. If you're looking to follow the organization as a whole, it's at PADV Atlanta across all our social platforms. And yeah, thank you guys. Taylor, Jen, both thank you so much. We appreciate the conversation. All
Thanks,
those watching, we appreciate you guys as well. So if you need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to PADV. Thank you guys and have an awesome day.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye.
Bye.